Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lucio. I am an alcoholic.
Hi, Lucio.
Hi.
And this one is the fourth step workshop. As most of you know, it is a 4-week course, if you want to call it. But usually every day is okay, every week is okay, because I give a resume of what we're talking about. And the first week of the month, we talk about resentments, as we did last week. The second week, we talk about fears. That would be the topic of tonight. And then the third week, we talk about harm done to others and the sex inventory. And then the fourth week, we just waste our time talking about everything else. And actually, we try to make a recap of the fourth step. And we try to follow the suggestion contained on the big book and the 12 and 12 using the four columns inventory. Tonight we're talking about fear. First of all, let's just recap why we are doing the fourth step. Why are we doing the fourth step? Anyone?
Go on.
Pardon me, alcoholic. Basically, if you don't do an inventory of your life, you can't see, one, what your true character defects are, and you can't figure out what parts of your life need to be adjusted and what parts of your life need to stay.
Wonderful. Any other reason that somebody can see it?
I'm Phyllis. I'm an alcoholic and an addict, and I see it as a way of undoing all the things from the past that the ego building, the resentments, the low self-esteem, and healing all of that. And it's sort of like cleaning a closet to me, like, get rid of that, store that one, in case I might, it's like cleaning house for me.
Well, essentially what we call is the cleaning house. Actually, I believe that there are few functions on step 4, and this one are probably the two main ones. The first one, to get rid of what is holding us from a spiritual recovery, and actually we say just to clear and to clean all the wreckage of the past. That is the one that prevents us from actually, what it says on the big book, to see the sunlight of the spirit. Because that is one of the goal of our recovery, is after step 3, to actually improve our conscious contact with this higher power that we choose and that we decided to surrender to. But before we actually can do that in practical terms, we have to get rid of all the negative energies that we have inside ourselves and that were at the root of our behavior. So the inventory is the beginning of a program of action. Actually, it's the first step of action that we have, and that action is directed toward changing something. And what we actually are trying to change is ourselves. We're not trying to change the situation, the condition, the people around us. What we really want to do, we start to see how we can change ourselves, because we know, and I will quote then from the big book, that the root of all the problems are us, the ego, the self. So either we change or we are doomed to go back in the same kind of behavior that then will just result in our drinking again, in our addiction, in our behavior, destructive behavior. That is the one that brought us here on the first place. As I like to say, there is a kind of double movement in the fourth step. Go back to the first one, okay, just very briefly. We reach fourth after going through this process, and this process is very simple. First we admit our powerlessness, the unmanageability of our life. So that is something that have really to be kind of very click in our mind, because there should be no reservation in our mind that that's it. In my case, I remember that reached a point where I said, that's it, I give up. I can't any longer attempt to quit on my own, to quit this drinking and the using and the gambling, because I can't. I give up. All my resources, all my energy, everything that I try to put into motion, all the little rationalizations, all the little trick of the mind, everything sooner or later brought me back to the same result, actually worse, and I kept going down. So I had to finally say, that's it, I can't do it. And in this giving up, in this admitting my lack of power, actually, personally, I discovered that I finally had a new power because I was introduced to AA. Here we are. And actually I discovered that AA had initially the power that I didn't have, because when I used to come to the meetings, even if I was needed to come to 2 or 3 meetings a day at the beginning, I realized that coming to meeting, I didn't drink. And soon, that connection really clicked on me. I say I'm stupid, but not so stupid. And I realized, wow, there is some energy in this group, some power in this program, that even if I don't understand exactly what they're talking about, even if I am feeling uncomfortable with the God and all these things that I thought it was totally out of the world, actually they are on the world, I realized that there was some power that was helping me not to go. So that was the first step. I discovered one of the first paradoxes of AA, that giving up power, I actually had a new power, because I was, plugging into a different source of power. And the source of power was, for me, AA. Then, obviously, there was the first moment of humility when I decided that if I cannot do it by myself, I need help. And then when I accepted the fact that I needed help and I had to ask for it, and I came to AA, and I realized that AA as a higher power could just be a very good step for me to accept that I needed a higher power to be able to just stop the compulsion. Because my first goal was, I don't want to drink any longer. I have to stop this compulsion and this voice that tells me this time will be different. So I have to ask for this help. I asked help, and I start to believe that only with the help of a higher power I could do it. Then I came to step 3. Step 3, it was a kind of difficult one, but essentially is the beginning of a transformation that amazed me afterwards, and it is the aspect of surrendering. I didn't believe in God at the time, but I realized that surrendering to the higher power was enough for me. And the moment that I said, you know what, I give up. I cannot manage my life any longer. I cannot be in control of my life, because every time that I manage my life, I screwed up. So I have to surrender. And I surrendered to this higher power and said, okay, show me how I can live my life in a different way and see if my life improves, if something is changing. So once I come to this point, and here we are, I assume, we are all more or less at this point, that we just surrender, we accepted our powerlessness, we believe in a higher power, whatever your higher power is. I will call mine God, so just you can translate it whatever you want to call it in your own terms. And I surrender, and we surrender to this higher power. Now, what is fun is that the real effects of the surrendering, of just having this new manager taking care of our lives, will be seen to its full effect only when we have finished the step between 4 and 9. So basically, when we clean the wreckage, the obstacles that prevent us from actually having this direct communication with our higher power. We can have glimpses of it, we can do it and keep doing it through prayers, we keep surrendering, but the real goal is to produce those changes within ourselves that will permit us to be really in this direct contact with our higher power, and to finally feel free to have this peace inside that will allow us to know what God's will for us is. So how do we clean a house? The first step is an inventory. As an inventory means to find the assets and the liabilities in a business, in whatever it is. And in this case, we have to find the assets and the liabilities in ourselves. The liabilities, we call them character defects and the character flaws, and the assets we call assets, character asset, the positive aspect that we have. And I stress this point because it's very important when we're doing the fourth step, not only to go back and see all the negative things, all the destruction that we did, because that is important, that we face the past and take responsibility and get rid of it. But it's important also that we see that we actually have positive parts in us. Because one of the temptation that we have is to fall into the total self-pity, oh God, I did so much damage, I did so much problems, I am a piece of shit, I'm good for nothing. That is the kind of way, that start to use shame and guilt as the tools to put us into self-pity. And once we are in self-pity, as I like to call it, that is a highway to relapse. So we have to try to avoid that. So the first effects of the fourth step as an inventory is that we are going back in the past. Going back in the past and start to relieve and to see all the destruction that our behavior created reinforces step 3, the surrender aspect. Because I go back, when I was a teenager, oh, look at that, oh my God, I got drunk, I did that. You see, I managed my life. Good decision to let God manage my life. So I keep going back and reinforcing the fact, every time that I look at events in the past where I failed because I kept following the same behavior, I reinforce my fourth step. My third step, the surrender. So I made a good decision into living my life managed by another power, my higher power. Then we start to face what are the most common problems. There are resentments, usually anger, fears. We start to see what the harm we've done to others, particularly in our relationship and therefore in the sex inventory. In this process, we prepare ourselves for step 5. But at the same time, in the process of examining the past, we start to see what our liabilities are, what character defects are. So in examining our resentment, our fears, and the harm done to others, and examining the part that we have in those behaviors, we start to see which character defects are the ones that are controlling our life. And I will go back to that because actually are the tools that the ego uses to bring us back under his domain, under the management of the ego. In the same process, we start to prepare a temporary list that we will use then for step 8 and 9 for the demands. So that's how basically the step 4 is the preparatory work, for 5, in which we will start to examine our resentment, the fears, and bring out all our character defects. 6 and 7, so we can ask God to remove this character defect, and then 8 and 9 to have the list of the people that we harm, of the harm that we have done, and make amends and repair. That is the process that at the end it should leave us completely clean. And after we are clean, then we can start to maintain with step 10 our the cleanness, to keep ourselves at the level of honesty and feeling at peace with ourselves. And then 11, we reinforce our conscious contact, and now we can have it because the mind is not tortured with all this fear, this anger, this emotion that really prevent us from going and say, God, wherever you are, here I am. Tell me what your will for me is. So we have to find the kind of peace inside so that we can actually improve this contact with our higher power through meditation and prayer. And then in step 12, once we have this peace, once we trust our higher power, what we do, we essentially carry the message, and we are in part the message, because if we change our life, people that sees us, knows our story and know our story and see our changes, they can see that the message is there. There is hope, because that is what really this program gave us. At least it gave me at the beginning, hope. When I came, I was in despair. I thought there was no chance for me. I just wanted to die. I came here and suddenly I saw other people smiling, laughing, joking, and I saw a light in the eyes of other people. I said, oops, maybe there is hope. And that hope was enough. There was a little crack in my despair, and it was what helped me to hang on this program and suddenly work this program and develop a completely different way of facing life, of feeling for life, of enjoying life, of having this sense of serenity and peace. And then we carry this principle, and then we practice. We try to practice this principle in all our affairs. And I rather do it now to say, what I believe are the most important principle that we try to practice, because they relate to how we will work with fears tonight. And I do believe that, at least in my life, what I try to practice every single day in all my affairs are 4 principles. The first one is rigorous honesty. Rigorous honesty is important because, let's put it this way, it prevents me from keep making harm to other people or to harm myself. Because if I'm honest in all aspects of my life, I cannot really harm other people. People can decide to be hurt anyway, but it is not the harm that is unnecessary. If I'm honest, I prevent myself to harm myself. And being honest, again, is not just saying the truth. I just say the truth all the time. Being honest means to look at the motives and the reason why we say things, why we do things, and find that those motives, the motives, the reasons behind our actions and our words are actually in tune with the other 2 principles that are open-mindedness, compassion, and love. So if I feel that the motives are honest, then I am honest. There was actually one verse that I think is come from my poems. I don't remember exactly who wrote it, but I think it is. And it says that, I can paraphrase if you want because I cannot find it obviously, but it says that a truth, here it is, a truth that's told with bad intent beats all the lies you can invent. Think about that. You can say a truth with meaning reasons, with bad intentions, and it's much worse because you can make much more harm with that truth that is underlined by bad reasons than lying to people. So being honest means basically saying the truth with good intentions. Okay? So now, last week we talked about resentment. We went through a kind of example, and we see how resentments are the first offender in terms of bringing us back to relapse and into drinking. And from that example, we showed how we can elicit certain character defects that are coming out of that. Actually, who doesn't have the... Okay, this one, just let me interrupt one second. This one is the review of fears. If you can take one and pass around. This one is the list of the most common fears that it can be just, can help you to guide yourself. Resentments. This one is a list of common character flaws. This one is the one of character assets. And this one is a checklist, combination of both character flaws. Okay, this one is review. I don't know where to put them. Is that
the one? Was that the same from last week?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
That what we got last?
It looks like a lot of paper, but why not? The reason why I give this paper because I need to say, and it's very important that we realize that the 4-step inventory usually is suggested that we do it in writing.
That's the same as this? Asset, character.
Everybody has more or less the...
Yeah, I give you one.
Thanks.
Okay. Oops. Okay. just very shortly, this one, the kind of order that I like to put this one. Actually, with fears, it's not so much important, but character flaws and character assets. Essentially, this one is what all works, okay? In the review of fears, it's not like the review of resentment. The resentments have 4 columns. I like to make the fears just with 2, because that basically what in the big book is only these 2 kind of aspect of fears. But essentially, when you see, you made the list of the fears, so you have the list of fears if you forgot some of them, and if you really forgot those fears, trust me, you don't have it. But you can still look at it and say, oh my God, yes, that is the one I would like to put on. And then you just ask yourself, why do I have this fear? In the book, it says, in page 66, I believe, or 67, we review our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper, even though we had no resentment in connection with them. We ask ourselves why we had them. I believe it is after he's talking of resentments, and he said, look how the word fear is bracketed. Ecco, page 67, at the bottom, So notice that the word fear, is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, the employer, and the wife. And that is a very extremely important statement that he does over here. This short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. It was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. It set in motion the trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve, but did not we ourselves set the ball rolling. Sometimes we think fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seemed to cause much trouble. Now, we reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper even though we had no resentment in connection with them. We asked ourselves why we had them. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? Self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great self-confidence, but it didn't fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. Okay, so this one is how basically the big book introduced fear to us. And fear actually is probably the most important element that we have to examine in terms of our recovery. The reason why I'm saying that, because fear actually is this kind of corroding thread that is in every single aspect of our life. I don't know how many of you experience this kind of feeling. Waking up in the morning, and suddenly as you wake up, the first thing you start to have this sense of panic, this sense of worry, this sense what is going to happen today, what did I forgot to do? There is a sense of anxiety. Okay, just to make clear one thing, there are certain fears that are natural instinct that I believe is a kind of fears of preservation. If I see a huge rock rolling toward me, that is a fear that actually is an instinct that helped me preserve my life. So there are certain fears that natural instinct that just bring us is in the realm of the natural way we react as living being to prevent us from harm, from physical harm, from something that can really kill us, or hurt us, physically hurt. So when we are talking about fears over here, we are not really referring to that kind of fears. We refer to the sense of anxiety, this kind of physical, this manifesting, this kind of, the physical contraction, the heartbeat that goes up, we start really to have this tension inside, and usually we say, I'm afraid. At times we can be scared, at times we use the word, I'm afraid, even in light ways. There is basically this kind of worry that is behind us. Now, I propose to do one thing, okay? Let's have, at this moment, just one minute of silence, okay? And I would like you to just, in this minute, to close your eyes, to just go into yourself, to stop as much as you can all thoughts. If you want, count. So if you have some thought coming, let it go. Don't deal with it, and just go inside yourself. Try to listen if you want noise, but do not try to think as less as you can. Just with your eye closed for 1 minute. Okay? Okay. Are you ready to wake up? Wake up, guys. We're still in the workshop. What I would like to ask you now, think about that minute that you were inside. Think about just what happened now. And how many of you experienced fear during that minute? You did? Okay, we have one. What about the others? Which fear did you have, Margaret?
I felt that I was fearful that I wasn't holding up my end. That it wasn't.
That you were not what?
That it wasn't that as good as the next person, or not taking equal part in wherever I was.
So basically, in place of letting those stopping your thoughts, you were thinking. That is exactly the point, guys. Fear is here. Is in our thoughts. Fear is the result of our ego. It's the ego that needs time and space just to keep going around and checking with other people and try to find validation in other things. The reason I'm saying that is because the only way that we actually can overcome fear, that is such an extremely deep-rooted emotions in ourselves, okay, is to stop the ego from taking control of our thoughts or from directing our thoughts and our emotions toward that sense of incompleteness, of control. And then why step 3 is the key to overcome fear. Surrender. Because the very moment that you surrender your ego, as we said before, to this higher power, and you plug into this new source of energy, what are you afraid of? Is when the ego tells you all the story about yourself, then you start to get into fear again. When you start again to get into your character defect, or start to go on the back and say, you see how bad I am, I'm not enough intelligent, I will never have a girlfriend, I will never have the job, I will not have... When the mind starts again to take over and trying to control situation, then fear starts. Fear coming from the ego. And he says over here very clearly, twice, be convinced, and it should be page 60 first, the first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. Okay? It's a very important statement that because it doesn't say actually any life of alcoholics or life of alcoholics. It's a much more generic statement. It's any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. And then on page 64 should be when he talk about the inventory, he says on the third paragraph, we did exactly the same thing with our lives. He's talking about making the inventory, trying to get assets and liabilities. So the goal is to decrease the liabilities and increase the assets. Basically, for us, is to decrease the character defects to come to terms with that and to increase the good qualities that we have. So we did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honesty. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup which caused our failure. And then you go back with the same expression. Being convinced. Being convinced doesn't mean, having doubts, maybe it is possible. No, you have to be convinced of that. And we as alcoholics, we should be convinced of that. Being convinced means have the certainty. Being convinced that self, manifested in various ways, was what has defeated us, we consider it its common manifestation. So here basically we have the beginning of a new way of facing life. It says very clearly, there is the ego and then there is us. There is the ego and me. The moment that I identify with the ego, I am the one that tries to be in control. Then that kind of identification is the one that brings me all those kind of character defects and emotions and fear. That's why surrender is so important. Surrender means surrender my will in my life. My will is my ego, because the ego just acts through the will. So the essence of the surrendering is suddenly taking the ego with all this desire of taking control and keep controlling our life and making decisions, and basically say, okay, you know what, I had you for 50 years, now it's time for you to go to pension, retirement time. I have a new manager. The ego doesn't like that, so the ego will try anything that it can to just get in control again. Okay? So we have this moment where surrendering will be, at least for me at the beginning, it was a kind of everyday exercise and struggle. Every time that I was finding myself in fear, or was found angry, I had to say, wait a minute, that is the ego that is telling me that. There is no real reason to be afraid, because I have a higher power that is much more powerful than that. Because I trust his decision for me, I don't have to be afraid. So I was going back and saying, well, God, wherever you are, I forgot about you, but it's your problem. I know that whatever will come, it will be the best for me, even if I don't see it now. That is essentially the only tool that we have toward fear. Actually, we have two only remedy for fear. There are faith and action. The only way that we can actually overcome fear, and as it says in the big book, outgrow fear, is through faith. There is a little proverb, or whatever you want to call it, that it says, fear knocked at the door, faith answered, and no one was there. Does it make sense to you guys? That's what it is. Fear will try to come to you. But if you really reinforce your faith in your higher power, reinforce your faith that you are complete as a human being, if you reinforce your faith that you surrendered, and that surrendering become being surrendered and stay surrendered, fear has no place to go. It cannot come to you. Because every time the fear comes, every time that you feel the sense of discomfort, you know that you're walking away from your higher power. We say here in AA, fear is a way of God to let you know that you're walking away from Him. So what I do in my daily experience, when I suddenly feel this sense of anxiety, I realize that I am walking away from my faith. My faith that I surrender to my higher power, God will take care of my needs. So I have just to do the footwork. I don't have really to go and struggle and try to manipulate, eventually start to be dishonest, to lie, to embellish things, to evade situations. I can really face situations as they are with absolute tranquility, because I know that when the chips will fall, God is the one that decided how they're going. And I know that I can trust it. Now, faith is not something that we have it, that comes easily. Faith is like, we talked last week, it's like forgiveness. Forgiveness is not a quality that we have and is with us, and we just have to take the can open and take it out. Okay, I can forgive people. No. Forgiving is a matter of learning how to forgive. It is a matter of keep asking God to help us how to forgive. It's a matter of us seeing the other people and using the other tool that is compassion and open-mindedness to see that the other people can be as sick as we were. So we can just say, okay, I need to be compassionate. So that is forgiveness. Faith is essentially the same process. There is people, and I do not want to preclude you to actually having the possibility of a flash experience, spiritual surrender, the spiritual, complete, immediate opening of the enlightenment that comes. That is possible. So I'm not saying that you need to go through all this process, okay? Actually, personally, I do believe that the only obstacles that we have to be completely at peace with ourselves and completely in the realm of the spiritual realm is the fact that we don't believe that we can do it. So the ego tells us that we need to go through a lot of bullshit. The same thing that the ego was telling us, you need to first drink only wine, second drink only that, third, you have to do this step, and then you will drink once a week, and then you will drink once a month. So the ego will convince us, it will put into motion all these plans to convince us that actually we can do it ourselves. Or the ego can tell us, come on, man, I see you're a grown up. You really want to believe in God that is taking care of everything? You have to have some control. You have to change your way. So the ego will give us a certain new plan, and
that's me. I'm sorry, I had to do that.
It's good.
I
believe that is most of us inside here. I believe that is most of us. That is basically what happened with us. We have this billboard, this advertising campaign that the ego is putting in our mind, and we keep looking at that and we keep believing it. And we do not realize that we are actually behind that this advertising campaign is just directed to make us feel that we can control, that we can be in charge, that we can reach all the things that we want, our sense of happiness, without actually having to go through the surrender aspect, basically without telling the ego go. Think in terms of pride. That is one of the things that, one of the character defects that I believe is the most strong obstacle that we have in terms of growth and recovery. The concept of pride. There are so many different facets, so many different ways of manifesting itself. But in reality, down to bottom is the same thing. I have to prove that I am not what I believe I am. That's what it is. That's what pride is. I have to show other people. Because we know who we are, actually. We want to believe that we know, and when we are on the negative side, I am a piece of shit. But it's in other ways. And you know how I can prove it? I will do something that will reinforce it. And that's what we do. daily, consistently, constantly, we come with an idea that is a negative idea about ourselves. We send out the messenger to put up all the signs. Then we go out into life. We pick up the sign. You see, I told you I was a piece of shit. We already prepared the ground to reinforce our idea. The ego tells us and just prepare the ground to reinforce us that we actually are negative. And that what happens every single day. We keep going out and reinforcing what the ego tells us that we are, usually is negative. Keep reinforcing the fact that we have to make choices, and mostly are based on fear. And when they're based on fear, the results usually are not good. At least they were not good for me. I don't think for you guys either, otherwise you wouldn't be here today. That is my take of it, you know. So, how do we deal with that? We have to suddenly realize that we have to stop the ego from taking control of us. And how do we stop it? Reinforcing our faith and through action. The first action is working this fourth step. Why? Because with this step, we start to get rid, first of the most dangerous emotion that is, after fear, it is anger, resentment. You know, at the end, we talked last week how at the end of the fifth step, basically, we should come out of working the step with no resentments. Only resentment that we can deal with are the resentments where we had no part whatsoever in it. And so we have the tool for that is forgiveness, to pray through prayer. I was telling you that with my sponsor, I say you should write the name of the 2 or 3 because there are more than that. Either people or institutions or ideas that you are really resentful because they did a violence to you in which you had nothing to do with it. And to make very clear is the simplest example is child abuse. If you were abused as a child, there is no way on earth that people can say, well, but you had something to do in it. You were the victim of violence. So the resentment has a certain power, because you can't say, well, but if I would have been different. There's nothing you can do. You were 5 years old, you were 6 years old, and somebody beat the shit out of you or abused you sexually, you have no fault in that. So how do you deal with that resentment? Through forgiveness. So you have this piece of paper, you put a name, and you pray every day, God, please help me to forgive this motherfucker. And the day after, you go back and you say, God, this guy is really, this person is really, but I pray you to give this person the best you can give to, the best in life. It sounds hypocrite. It sounds like something that, we do with sincerity, but we know that in our pain, actually, God knows what our emotions are. But if somehow the miracle do work, okay? You keep praying, and suddenly your resentment keeps decreasing. And that's how you deal with that. With faith, in terms of fear, we do basically the same thing. We start to surrender small aspects of which we can have the strength to overcome our fear. And then wait. And I guarantee you guys the results will start to come. And they're usually positive. So once we see that if we surrender little aspects and we try not to control and manipulate, but we just accept with faith, what will happen, and the results usually are much better than we would have had if we would have tried to manipulate, then we can say, okay, maybe I can surrender a little bit more. There is this kind of process that you can work on it. Okay? So when faith increases, fear decreases. So you will make decisions with less fear, the results will be absolutely better. So you increase your faith and your fear decreases. So that is how the process is. But again, it needs the commitment. You need the commitment of surrendering, the commitment of the action. The other part of the action is the one that I was telling before, the action that we have in applying those principles in all our affairs. Why? Because if I keep producing the same negative results while I'm going through the steps, I can never get clean. So I have to start from the beginning, while I'm working the steps, while I evidentiate my defects of character, to change my behavior so that I will not start to create other damage. Because what we use usually shame and guilt that come from this kind of behavior to then say, you see, I can never change. That's the ego campaign. The ego tells us there is no way. There is no way you can change. Don't listen to Lucio workshop and things. There is no way. You are doomed. My friend, you're doomed. That's what I was telling myself. You're doomed. You're going to Paul workshop. You can go to 200 meetings. But so you're such a piece of shit. And look, you thought you changed, and then yesterday you just went through this lie, you lie through your teeth, you try to manipulate situation, so you see there is no hope for you. That is what the ego will try to tell you consistently, constantly. Now, how do we get off this loop? Is finding the strength through the small surrender to correct, at least at the moment, the damage that we did at the moment. There will come more to reveal with step 10. But then you can do it even now. At any moment, during your recovery, try to just be aware of what your character defects are out. Be aware of that, at least. So you can somehow modify slightly your behavior. And then why we use this, the character defect analysis, okay? Once we examine our fears, actually, we discover that through the fact that our ego is involved, okay, we can we see that certain aspects of our ego are the one that are acting more often to bring us back into fear. And then we call that character defects. So as we did with the resentments, once we are, we have with us this simple, the common character flaws with us. So we examine a fear, let's say, and in examining how the mechanism of this fear is working on us, we discovered that we use, for example, pride. We discovered that we use envy, intolerance, lust, self-pitying. So we start to see that there are certain character defects that keep popping up during this process, okay? And we want, as in the case of the resentments, and I guarantee you that this page will be filled up when you go to harm done to others, because then where really all the character defects seem to explode, okay? But you keep feeling these common character flaws, and conversely, the assets, because you need to look what you did actually good in your life, because they have been good. At times you've been compassionate. At times you know that you have, you can be very, what can I say, grateful up for things. You can be kind. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you are all negative. So you have to see what aspect of your life also are positive, so that you can reinforce them in your daily behavior. Is that clear? Any question about that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, last time you said you kind of lined this up like this.
Yes.
So how do you do it? So first you do this, then you do that, then
you put this. You put this one. Say you put it this way.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that for this fear you start to mark the character defect.
Right.
For the other fear you start to mark the other character defect.
What about this? Continuous.
And then this one is the assets.
And then this one goes there?
Well, no, this one is just to remind you that if you need some character defect that you don't, you can put this one over here to look at it.
Okay. So this is, but what I want to understand is like this chart then, you know. So if I start marking all this, then I can get a good idea of what
happens. You will see that certain character defect will keep popping up consistently. For example, your resentment, you will discover that being self-centered, that being inconsiderate, that being dishonest, keep popping up. Mm. So you have an idea at the end of this work, which one are the areas of your life that keep producing this kind of emotions, so you can keep an eye on that. and which character defect are the most common flaws that you have that produce the negative behavior that results then back into drinking. So those are the character defects that you find out, because suddenly you find that one of these character defects is mark every single fear, use the same tool. Every single resentment, use the same certain character defect, keep popping up. You know, that is what you have to surrender to your higher power then on step 6 and 7, to remove from you this character defect, to reuse from you these flaws.
Can I ask one more question?
No.
Yeah. One of the things that also this sheet here,
Yeah.
my sponsor pointed out to me is that all character defects are actually natural survival instincts gone awry. If you look at this, I mean, it's like, this is your defect. Well, this is how it's supposed to be acting as well. So you can see what the corresponding
Instinct.
what you should be doing instead of what you are doing. So, like, if you're self-seeking, maybe it's because you're fearful that you're not going to be taken care of, and so because you're fearful of not being taken care of, the character the right way of acting becomes deformed into a self-seeking instead of. So you see how by having the two columns, you can see how the God-given attributes are deformed.
That is the liability, that is the asset. You have to move away from this, moving toward this. You remember last week we made an example in terms of talking about character defect, and I'm happy that you pointed out. Character defects actually are natural instincts. They are just the expression that I can never find. Got right. A wire. And we made the example of the natural instinct for security, for financial security. So there is nothing wrong in working to make some money, to have a house, to have clothing, to have to have something that keep us safe from the cold and stuff like that. The point is that when fear is injected by the ego into the natural instinct, and the instinct become completely off wacko, it becomes something like greed. So when you say greed, you know that your natural instinct would be working, moderation, would be just normality, okay? You realize that fear of not having enough, fear that you will not be taken care of in your future, transform this natural instinct into greed. And then greed starts to manifest itself in so many other forms. You become a liar, a cheater, a dishonest, inconsiderate, because you don't care damn about who is doing what to you. You just want to reach your goals. So that is how other things. Sexual instinct, okay? Natural sexual instinct is just to have a partner, to enjoy sex. It can be for reproduction, for pleasure. Fear can just come to you, and you can start to feel, wait a minute, I need this sex relationship to prove that I am worthwhile, because I don't feel worth it. Or I'm afraid I will not have enough sex. So that can become lust. And suddenly you start to behave, just lusting after everything, because fear is telling you, I need to have more and more and more. So that's how basically it works, particularly with us alcoholics, that we have certain natural instincts. There are the natural instincts that you found in the resentment column and the harm that you have column, right? I don't know if you remember that. Review of resentments.
We have a couple of those?
Yes.
Can I have one too?
Yes. If you don't have the resentment.
No, I didn't get that one.
Okay, this one are the resentment. This one is. Do you want to pass it around if somebody doesn't have it?
You have one?
Actually, if you guys want, this one is another way of facing the fear. That is at the fourth column. If you want to just pass this one too.
There's two here.
Okay.
Did you make these up?
I copy from here and there. Everybody else made them, and I copied. And The one that I did copy from other parts, but I typed it myself actually at this one, you know. But again, you know, I'm using material that is coming from other people, whatever I feel that it's that I'm feeling comfortable. I don't have the source, but sometimes the source is on the page itself. But I do not take credit for that.
Yeah, this is from the big book.
This one, yeah, it's been somebody printed it like that.
Yeah.
It was not me, you know, so has been for age into the AA fellowship.
Well, there are
Wait.
different ones. I, for example, have this one
Yeah.
that I'm working on right now.
Yeah, well,
So-
you know, each one has his own way. And again, as I said the other week also, you know, each sponsor has his own way of working with WhatsApp. Okay, this one is a suggested way. You will have your sponsor, you talk with your sponsor, and the sponsor then will give you the instruction how to do it. That is not the only way or the best way. This one is one way. Then your sponsor have other requirements. If you have a sponsor, you have to trust it. You know, that is the basic point. There is no reason having a sponsor not trusting the sponsor. So if you have a sponsor, you have to trust your sponsor and do what the sponsor, you know, indicates, suggests you to do. What we are doing over here is trying to, one second, we try just to see how usually it is worked. It's been proven that gives some positive results working according to the big book and the 12 and 12, and that is a traditional approach. Okay, then each one can find his own variations. Okay. Yes, Rob.
Is there any chance you could work an example
On
either one of these sheets? Just
well, the resentment we worked it last time. With fears, my approach is very simple. That's the reason why I don't use the other one with fears, and I use the one that is very, very simple. You know, because the very moment with fear, the very moment that you examine why you have the fear, you know, you discover that actually the fear it doesn't. I don't know. It's not that you're using character defects in relation to fear. Resentments, you can see that you had a part in it, so you had your character defect. With fears, if you go down, you realize every time that fears is based on ego. So the only solution that you have, you cannot really elicit much information from fear, but the fact that you are involved in yourself, that the self is still trying to take control of you. So you go back to the tool that you have, that is step 3, or prayer, and surrender. You know, with fear, basically, it's not easy to get. I don't do it because I do believe that the response from fear is surrender. And every time you examine self-fear, you will discover that the only solution that you have is surrender. See, we have to stop looking at trying to resolve the problem, looking at the consequences, you know, at the results, but go to the cause. Because I can deal with the sense of, you know, excitement, or I am afraid of going to this test tomorrow, so I will study more. You know, I will try to, maybe I can want to cheat. You know, and every time I get this kind of emotion, I try to produce something that will change the results. Okay? Oh, I have this sense of anxiety, so I will take yoga classes. Oh, fun, I found this beautiful yoga, and nothing against yoga, you know. But so I go for 6 months, and everything, you see, now I'm feeling this sense of relaxation, and then it suddenly happen, and all the panic, all the fear, you know, keep producing again. So the ego will tell me, well, now, you know, you can find another meditation class. Putting yoga and meditation together, you will do that. Or maybe you can find a jumping the rope class, you know, whatever. The ego will tell you all this way of smoothing out the effects, the causes, the fear. But it will never tell you, the ego will never tell you that the only way that you actually can deal with this on a permanent basis is by firing him. The ego will never tell you, Lucio, you know what, or Rob, you know what, you want to get rid of fears? You have to fire me. You fire your ego. The ego will never tell you that. But that's what you have to know. Only if you fire your ego as the controller of your life, and you surrender and you just tap directly on the energy, the higher source of your higher power, then fear starts to dissipates, then, as he says in the big book, we start to outgrow fears.
Well, it's interesting because one of the fears you show here is letting go. And I feel that a number of times, and I keep thinking, if I go into a situation and completely let go, all these sort of things will happen. You know, I might drink or make a fool of myself or injure somebody or whatever. Is all that possible to remedy by just saying, opening myself up and letting a higher power take effect? Because it doesn't feel like
it
go out of control.
It doesn't feel if you start to analyze that with fear. If the ego is already start to see all the possible consequences. If you follow your natural instinct, there is an instinct of basically of having faith in the process. Okay? If you start to analyze, I will make a fool out of myself, there is already an analysis. There is already feeling that you can actually make a fool of yourself, so the judgment of other people is so important to you. You already approach that with fear. The letting go is letting go to God. But again, you cannot say, well, I can walk in the middle of the railroad, you know, and I'm sure that God will stop the train. We are not talking about this kind of behavior. You know, I guarantee you the train will hit you. Maybe not. Maybe God actually will remove you. I don't know. But, you know, we are talking about fears that are integral part of feeling not complete as a human being, of feeling that you're lacking something, of feeling that you have to protect yourself from the world outside and from yourself. Give it up. Surrender to your God, to surrender to the higher power, and have faith that actually you will be taken care of. As long as you just follow these basic principles, you are completely honest. Because honesty, said, prevent you from harming others and from harming yourself. If you are compassionate, because compassion just puts you in touch with other people's feelings, so it puts you out of the self. If you are open-minded, there is the humility, being teachable. Not being judgmental, because judgment prevents you from peace. And love, that is the expression, the total, complete expression of the heart, of the soul, with no conditions attached. Then you have nothing to be afraid of.
But if I let go completely, the house becomes an incredible mess.
Then what will be?
The house becomes an incredible mess. I mean,
I'm sorry, the house? I didn't hear the word.
The house, yeah, it becomes an incredible mess. I mean, everything just...
That's what the ego will tell you.
Uh-huh.
That's what the ego is telling you. You do not know actually the moment that you let go what happened. Is when you already feel that certain action will produce a certain results, you already determining what you're going to surrender. You're not letting yourself go completely. You already are with fears. If I do that, then that will happen. You don't know. If you don't start to let go, you will never know. If you keep living with the fear that if you do certain things, that exactly living in the will, that is the source of all your problems. Living in self-will, self-reliance. He says very clearly in the book. Self-reliance is what fails us. Let go. I mean, I know that I fucked up enough. There is a certain point I said, that's it. Let me try some different way. And that is a different way. And you know what? The results are amazing. Amazing.
Sounds
amazing.
so easy, huh?
Yeah, well, you know, I agree with that. You know, it's just it's not that we're really taught that by society. I mean, everything surrounding. I mean, you know, right now I feel you.
Michelino, you can find 1,000 excuses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that I heard in the rooms, and I've turned it around a little bit. You have fear. He has fear. Fear. I have fear. 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 Right? And you have little faith sometimes. You're wrong. You have a lot of faith. You have an unbelievable well of faith. The faith that you're not good enough. The faith that everything's going to go wrong. The faith that you're going to be abandoned. The faith that you're not going to get laid. You're not going to have enough money. No one likes you. That's faith. Fear is the giant, most obscene form of faith. And the faith in the negative. The faith that you cannot be taken care of. That's what fear is. Fear is the ego's form of replacing faith. Because the ego The disease of alcoholism, played through your ego, wants to destroy you. It really wants you to go do cocaine and die a painful death, and it believes, unlike every single parasite out there, that it will survive your death. So it creates, through fear, the faith in the negative that feeds itself. Imagine if someone was standing behind you the entire time you did everything, saying, you're going to die. You're going to die. And you'll believe it, because that's the only way it feeds. And instead of having faith that you are good enough, that you will stay sober, that you will have real friends, that you will have enough, whatever you need will become place. It may not be what you want, because that's your ego. What you need will appear somehow if you do the right things. And the right things is not turning to the faith in fear, turning to the faith of sobriety and AA. The tools are in this, in the 12 and 12, right? Now, turning it over. Well, it's easy for the fear of turning it over to turning it into to not doing anything. Turning it over isn't like talking about cleaning the house. Turning it over is not doing stuff. Turning it over is trying not to control it. Because if you fear that things will go wrong, you have the faith that they will go wrong.
I noticed when I earlier said that I had this deficiency, like I felt like I wasn't keeping up my end of things, and just to say that, I realized when you said, "Oh, that's the self-will," I realized right away that that was not true. You know, I mean, I had a lot of compassion for myself for the fact that I do pretty much, take care of things, my side of things. So it was a really good feeling, that what I said was just a will, and it wasn't very accurate. That I had other qualities that, that was compensate for that.
Good.
Yeah.
I have a question about ego. Are we born with it, or do we create it to protect our low self-esteem, or where does it come from?
Honestly, I do not have a precise answer, but I can give you my little interpretation. The ego are essential. My beliefs, that is my beliefs, and then I want to hear what Barnaby has to say, because I'm interested in that. See, I do believe that we are just a spiritual energy that suddenly happens somehow to have different expression, different form, and we are this human form. The ego is this part. The ego is the part that represents our human being as such. But we are something that is the total energy, the identification with God.
I believe that too.
Okay, that essentially that's what we are trying to re-identify with. Unfortunately, we keep identifying with the ego that is the human form, the human manifestation. On a personal level, when I feel that I get into this sense of anxiety or something is just I don't have the sense of peace inside. I know that I step into my human nature a little bit too much, and I can just bring myself up and observe myself as I go through my emotion in life as they are. I can feel pain, but somehow it's not me who is feeling pain. I can see Lucio that is feeling pain, and I can just have compassion just in observing it. I can say I can go through the pain that it comes to me, and then see how it develops without buying into it. I can see the anger suddenly arise, and then look at it and not buy into the drama. I just let it come and go. All my emotions teach me something, and when they arise, I just see them coming, I face them, and then I let them go. I feel that at times I can really, that is personal, that I have this sense of really, I've been out of myself, and I can observe myself going through these things. And I do believe that is what essentially the spiritual awakening is the awareness that you are one with God.
And then you learn from these experiences?
if I learn or not is actually irrelevant to me, because they will not affect me as I am. For me, that is all a kind of illusion. It's a kind of a dream. It's a dream of the human. In these human things, I will learn from experience as a human person, but I will not learn anything as a spiritual person. Because
you are.
I am the experience.
Yeah.
I am.
So why'd you come to Earth?
I don't know. The question comes from the ego. Me as a spiritual person, I don't care. It's not a question that really has any matter. It is. We are here. I'm here. We believe that we are here. We believe that we are separate. Do you believe that you're separate? I don't. I feel that we are just a different manifestation of exactly the same energy.
I believe that.
So I can buy into the separateness, into the need to control, to move, to manipulate, to feel. Once I realize that is my ego, and I really retreat, or I put myself again back into my position with this higher power, with my God, that is absolute love, then everything becomes irrelevant to me. Everything becomes really irrelevant to me. I observe it, and I can observe Lucio getting involved in all these emotions and trying to improve himself. But in reality, you have nothing to improve. You have nothing to improve. He has nothing to improve. If we could actually go into our spiritual being, then we realize that we are absolutely, and we are supposed to be, complete. And once we realize that we are complete, all the rest become marginal. Then we can really relax, and we can observe our life going, trusting absolutely that everything is meant to be as it is, exactly at the moment. Thinking I have to put myself into the now. There is no other fucking place that you can be but the now. There is no other place. You can think about the past now. You can think about the future now. You can be afraid of losing something that you have, thinking that you actually have it now. And you're afraid that you will not get something you want in the future now. You are in the now, but we are going, oh wait, I have to go into the now. You are the now. Get into your heart, and suddenly you are. And then you can observe the nature that created space and time, and good and bad, and light and darkness, because that's how it manifests itself. But you can just go back to the source. Identify yourself with your heart, you will identify with the universe. And then all the rest is irrelevant. Everything else is just, you observe it, and it goes. The soul doesn't ask why. The soul is. Once you feel that you are, why belongs to the mind? Why belongs to the ego? Doubt belongs to the ego. Once you have this absolute and total faith in the identity with your heart and with the source, there is no doubt. When there is no doubt, there is no fear. So simple.
It is simple.
Yeah. And any one of us can have it right now. I don't believe there is any need to go to seminars and retreat. No. If we actually could just free ourselves for this advertising campaign that tell us that, oh well, I need to do something to get it. You don't need to go fucking shit. You already have it. You
It's
already
right here.
are. Just believe it, and it's over. So simple.